Welcome again, my friends, to another installment of Batman GM's review of the Ultimate Equipment Guide by Mongoose Publishing. This is a very nice tool to have. I was lucky to find it in a local game store here a while back when we were just kind of out looking. It was on the used shelf, so it's brand new, but it's still, previously owned. Okay. Uh, this installment is called the Knicks of the Little People. Now, I have, okay, I'm guessing they struggled with a good name for the chapter, but the premise is the same. Uh, the specifics here are gnomish in ingenuity and halfling. Uh, Actually, I think I would have called it gnomish technology and halfling ingenuity instead of what they did, but that's just my opinion. We all know, or more or less know, that the gnomes are infamous for having certain individuals, or as a culture, for being tinkerers and inventors of coming up with some pretty interesting and sometimes highly dangerous conceptual devices. And this is, I don't know, as a culture. Uh, I'm not sure what to make of it. I mean, ideally, they imply that the gnomes are a little bit more technologically advanced than the rest of them. Although I make an argument that, in my experiences, the elvish technology far surpasses anything the gnomes come up with, and it's far more reliable. On the other hand, I think the gnomes are making up for lack of magic talent and/or looking at things from a practical, non-magical world approach, i.e., what our ancestors, as humans, did as we developed through time and history. So the heck of this, they have some pretty interesting things, and then they have some pretty kind of things where you kind of grimace and go, "You want to do what?" Right? Okay. The halflings, on the other hand, halflings are notorious. It's almost cliche that they are comfort loving, food loving, partying types that either build very comfortable burrows or are suffer wanderlust, but do so with the best comforts they can achieve, whether they steal it, buy it, or invent it. So that's what the basic concept here is. When we're looking at things like bouncing boots, I can't imagine why you would want a pair of boots with multiple coils and a ratchet system inside, but they give you a bonus to jump. Okay. The Bumblefoot clamp hands. Says these heavy metal gauntlets have ratchets built into each of the knuckle joints. Once they close around an object, only pressing the release wire located at the back of the wrist will open again. Okay. There's a device that could be problematic, but at the same time, if you have a character who's worried about dropping his weapon, having a pair of these gauntleted hands would prevent that from happening. Right there. It's basically what they are, armored hands. Although, whatever. False weapons, underwater goggles, helmet lantern, listing helmet, infinite book. Much more mundane it sounds, the infinite book is metal and wooden frame that clamps on one side of a stack of parchments. Okay, basically a book. Rob Bob, rope clanker, mechanical log, mini lens mask, Southfire, excuse me, buzz shield. Hmm. Buzz shield is an example of what happens when the ingenuity of Gnomes is applied to art of war. Size of a small shield. Anyone proficient with shields can use the shield without penalty. If the shielder has also exotic weapon proficiency, cheap buzz shield, however, is something more. The shield contains a powerful spring, a complex gearing mechanism, a series of retractable metal teeth. When wound up, the full round action provokes attack opportunity and becomes a lethal weapon. All the while still functioning as a shield if you use an offhand weapon. Okay, I can see that as being one of those weapons of last resort or shock. Right there's a picture of it, right? Looks like a buzzsaw. Basically, I'm guessing is that you trigger it and it literally spins like a buzzsaw for a round. Then it takes another full round to crank it back. So if you were carrying it and used it at the right moment, it could be a shock and awe kind of weapons against opponents. Pressured power sword. I want a sword that has blades that shoot out of it. But guess what? There's your sword and the mechanics for it. And then we got swimming gear. Pressure powered sword. Well, there was a B fantasy movie that had a character who had one of these big ugly looking things that looked impressive to begin with because I was young and stupid. But then when I understand the mechanics of swordplay and the use of swords, I realized later that that was a very impractical weapon, very heavy. It was very unbalanced. It had to be very unbalanced. And the only shock and advantage it had was that the two smaller blades on each side could actually shoot off and like a crude arrow at somebody. And then you were left with a really good broadsword at that point. But I still think that it would have been more heavier and unwieldy because the hilt would have been thicker. Anyway, can't remember the name of that movie. Oh, sorry about the yawns, folks. Like I said, day or night, I don't care. I'm always got the yawns. Now we get into halfling comforts. Now, going back to the gnomes. I've never been a big fan of gnomes. I mean, as a player race, I don't think I've ever played a gnome. If I have, it's just been once or twice in a very short period of time. Never really got into their particularities because to me, the gnomes are something between a halfling and a dwarf, and kind of like an add-on character race that came along later when everybody kept saying, "Well, what about these guys?" And that's fine. That's fine. But as a player, I've never cared for them as a player race. There's nothing in particular against them, and it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing when I hear all the ideas, the tinker gnomes and stuff that keep mucking with stuff, and then coming up with ideas that are more often more dangerous than they are useful as a comic relief kind of thing once in a while. Okay, but for the most part, I guess you have to have a different kind of personality to be really into that kind of adventure. I'm trying to picture in my head, a party of gnomes on an adventure. It doesn't work in my brain well. Okay, halfling comforts. Halflings, on the other hand, are probably some of the most interesting character races, in the aspect of they're cliche in a lot of aspects. I think so many of us force these little people into a set of preconceived notions that this is the kind of they're going to be scouts, thieves, or rogues, or maybe a warrior. We don't give a lot of credit to the priests and them being as priests or wizards. And I know of a friend of mine who played a halfling wizard to great success. In part, that the fact that we took into account that wizards were not common among halflings, and that it came as a great surprise to many people. We always had that moment of make the NPC make a reaction check to the idea that we now got a powerful arch wizard that's only 3 feet tall. Just saying. It's just like the warriors. You don't see too many halfling paladins, but I have actually created and played one, and they're pretty tough little buggers if you use all their advantages to the fullest. Of course, because of their size, there's a lot of physical limitations that you take negatives when you're in that kind of character class. So on the opposite side of this, I think the positive outweighed the negatives, and why can't there be halfling paladins? That was my argument. So the GM at the time allowed me to roll with it. And did quite well with them. See, most halflings take offense to mention a racial stereotype, but those who employ create a few interesting devices to aid them in what they do best, staying comfortable. Now, in that same light, so there's a lot of useful items here for both extended campaigns for comfort and for color, right? Here's one of the more useful items that I kind of find that that probably should have been in the rogue section, but you couldn't put everything in the rogue section. The tool pipe. In this case, it's a all external appearance is a normal soapstone or meerschaum pipe with a thick wooded stem. The tool pipe conceals its true purpose. Its stem contains a tiny but complete set of thieves' tools. Size of tools does limit their effectiveness. So what we got here is a concealed set of thieves' tools and a very common item. So the fact that you could be, searched by the guards or the whatever, they're not going to think. Most of them are not going to think twice of your taking your pipe, but come up with an actual overt pack of thieves' tools, and you might have a lot of serious explaining to do. Portable stove, earth down bedroll, expert thieves' tools, the halfling harness, secured spice rack, woolen dome tent, the whistle pipe. We don't have a whole lot of add-ons in here for them, but what's here is nice. Like I said, in a nutshell, the category could probably apply to a lot of sometimes frivolous yet unique items that, while we're looking at, they're not going to save the day or help you climb the mountain or, I don't know, brave the depths. Will make your life existing in the wilderness more comfortable, and that's something to be considered. If you're a true adventuring group, even your roving pack of murder hobos, I guess, you spend an awful lot of time in the sticks. If you're out there, you going to live day-to-day existence, or you're going to thrive. And to do that, you want to do it with as much comfort as possible. This is one of the reasons that over the years, most players gravitate to wanting to have a bag of holding. And like I made some arguments in some past entries on the Santa Claus effect, of the Monty Hall effect of having too much loot and too much magical items to be available. You have to ask yourself, just how many bags of magic holding are there out there? If everybody can have one, every adventurer can have one. That means there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these things. Where's the factory cranking them out? Making magical items is an expensive and laborious project for most wizards, and there's not a commercial line of wizards sitting there creating pocket dimensions over and over and over again. So where does it all come from? But yet most players end up with a bag of holding or two, and they load it up with all kinds of stuff. And most of that stuff is to make their lives simpler or easier, or to give them that, aha, I got something for this scenario thing, right? So I know practicality of a lot of it. One character, he liked to carry a sledgehammer around in his bag because that made it easier to pick and knock down a wall or a door or open a chest that he didn't really want to deal with trying to risk picking a lock. He just bashed the top in, right? Okay. And I made the argument that using a warhammer, while 6 does work to that effect, there's a difference of a tool and an item for war. Overkill versus finesse. Okay, so anyway, lots of nice little knickknacks and stuff. Not as many as some of the other chapters, perhaps. It would have been nice to have a little bit more stuff in here. I'd like to have seen some more foodstuffs and things, but you find those in that subchapter, that chapter on that food and so on. But hey, it is what it is. It's a good addition to anybody's shelf. I think equipment guys add a lot of flavor, especially to newer players who like to trick out their characters. And for experienced characters, players having a plethora of gear and equipment that's non-magical in nature gives them a better chance of leveling the playing field, so to speak, with all those who are loaded down with magical items. And if you're running a campaign where magic's scarce, magic items are rare, like they ought to be, then this sort of stuff, the mundane stuff, takes on a far more important place in the gaming world. Until next time.